Okay guys, so let's continue with the muscle of the lateral forearm. Actually, you only have two. You have your brachioradialis and you have your extensor carpi radialis longus. Okay? If you have longus, then you have brevis, right? But the brevis is located at the posterior forearm. So the longus is lateral forearm. The brevis is posterior forearm. Okay, so discuss that later. Okay? So let's go with the first muscle. Okay, your brachioradialis. Your brachioradialis has an origin at the lateral supracondylar ridge. Okay, so I changed my ink into yellow so that you can see it. Okay, so this is the origin and this is the insertion. Okay, that is your styloid process of the radius. Okay, so since the brachioradialis only crosses the elbow and it doesn't cross the wrist joint, it can only move the elbow. Okay, at the same time the radioulnar joint. Okay, so it can flex the elbow, or you call that flexion of the forearm, and it rotates the forearm to mid prone. Okay, so halfway only. So for example, if you are assuming a supinated position, the forearm, I mean, if your forearm is on a supinated position, the brachioradialis can turn the forearm to prone position. Okay, but it's only halfway. It's not a full pronated forearm. And at the same time, if you are assuming a pronated forearm, you can turn the forearm to supination, but again, only halfway. So, yung brachioradialis, siya niya ang muscle nga maka-pronate at the same time supinate sa forearm, but until the middle lang. Not full supination, but and not full pronation. Okay? So, let's go to the nerve supply. So, the nerve supply of your brachioradialis is the radial nerve. Okay? So, remember ha, anterior forearm. Remember kayo na? So, median nerve except for the flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor digitorum profundus. Okay? So, ang lateral forearm actually, radial nerve tanan together with the posterior compartment. Okay? So, let's go to the next muscle. Okay? Your flexor carpi radialis longus. Okay. Actually, it is below the origin of your brachioradialis. Your brachioradialis origin is right here. Okay, and below that is the origin of your extensor carpi radialis longus. Okay, both of them have origin at the lateral supracondylar ridge. Okay, so the same sila sa brachioradialis. Okay, but this time it crosses the elbow and at the same time it crosses the wrist. Why? It is inserted at the what? Base of the second metacarpal bone. Okay? Okay. So it crosses the wrist, it crosses the elbow, so it can extend the wrist and extend the elbow. Correct? Okay. Aside from extension of the elbow, extension of the wrist, it can also abducts the wrist joint. Okay? So when you say abduct the wrist joint, it can move the wrist that way. Okay? So that is abduction of the wrist again. I mentioned it a while ago when we discussed the anterior forearm, or you call that radial deviation. Okay? Abduction of the wrist, or you call that radial deviation. Of course, when your flexor carpi radialis longus will contract that way, the wrist will move this way, correct? That is radial deviation. Okay? And if it will contract that way, it can extend the wrist, correct? Okay. So again, since it is the lateral forearm supplied by the radial nerve. Okay, so you only have two muscles of the lateral forearm. Okay, so brachioradius and you have your extensor carpi dielis longus. They have the same origin. They have the same nerve supply. Okay, of course, your brachioradius only insert in the styloid. It doesn't cross the elbow. But in contrast, your flexor carpi dielis longus cross the elbow and the wrist, so it can also move the wrist. Okay, so that's your lateral forearm. Okay, now let's go to the posterior forearm. Okay, so we have this group of muscle. So you have the previous one at the lateral compartment, flexor carpi radialis longus. Right now we have flexor carpi radialis brevis. Okay, and to add, you have flexor digitorum, flexor digiti minimi, flexor carpi ulnaris, and the anconeus. These are the superficial group of muscle at your posterior forearm. Okay, so let's discuss the first. So you have your extensor carpi radialis brevis. Okay, now common origin of your extensors in the forearm is lateral epicondyle. Okay? In contrast, the common origin of your flexor of the forearm are medial epicondyle. The extensors, lateral epicondyle. Okay? So, insertion of course is the third. This is the base of the third. Okay, kaina, nduman nyo, ang imuyang longus, base of the second. Ang brevis siya, base of the third. And if you recall, the flexor carpi radialis sa imong anterior compartment, duwang insertion niya pero human second and third lang galing. Okay? If you review it. Okay. Since it is crossing the elbow, it is crossing the wrist, it can extend the elbow, extend the wrist, right? Okay. Okay, so extend and abducts the wrist. Okay, you can also other extend the elbow. Okay, elbow. Okay, and the nerve supply is radial nerve. Okay, so let's go to the next muscle. Okay, extensor digitorum. I think this is the longest muscle of the forearm. Okay, so origin, okay, right here, lateral epicondyle. Okay, then now observe, you have the middle and the distal. Remember, kaina, sa flexor group, may flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor digitorum profundus. In contrast, sa imo posterior forearm, there's no more superficialis and profundus. Only extensor digitorum. So therefore, it is inserted at the middle and distal phalanx. Kaya naya in contrast, ang superficialis sa middle, ang profundo sa distal. But in the extensor group, the extensor digitorum, yung kwa ilang dua, middle and distal phalanx, meaning it can flex the PIP and it can flex the DIP. Okay, so let's count kung pila ka joint ang kinakross niya. Okay, since it is from the humerus, it is crossing the elbow, it is crossing the wrist, it is crossing the MCP, it is crossing the PIP, and it is crossing the DIP. So therefore, it flex extend the elbow, it extends the wrist, it extends the MCP, it extends the PIP, and it extends the DIP. Okay? So, amo nang iya nga action. Okay? So, it's easy to take note. Okay? Again, let me remind you again that whenever a muscle crosses a joint, it will move that joint. Niblanamba ko na sa inyo. Okay. So, action. Extends the fingers. Extend the hand. Okay. You can add the fingers. Okay. He's talking about the DIP and the PIP. Correct? Amo ng fingers. Ang hand dyan, ti-erase na siya. Then, add ka pagid elbow. Okay? What? Okay. So, again, supplied by the radial nerve. Okay. So, okay. So, this is the unique. Di ba? When we discussed this in the lecture, the unique thing about the posterior group is the indices and the digiti minimi. Correct? And both of the anterior and posterior have polyches. Okay. So, extensor, digiti minimi. Okay. So, again, common origin, lateral epicondyle. Okay. Of course, this is inserted at the little finger. Okay. Or the extensor expansion of the little finger. Okay. Together with the extensor digitorum. Okay. Of course, it extends the MCP. Okay, so actually it can extend the elbow, weak extensor of the elbow, weak extensor of the wrist. Okay. Extend the MCP, this one, of the little finger, and extends the IP. Okay. The IP, PIP. Okay. So that is supplied by the radial nerve. Actually, tanan, all of the extensor group are supplied with the radial nerve. It's easy to take note. Okay. Next, you have your flexor carpi ulnaris, again, common origin. And since it is ulnaris, think about the carpal bone and metacarpal bone. What carpal and metacarpal bone are located at the medial side? Because when you say ulnaris, medial side. Okay, so you can think about of the fifth, correct? Fifth metacarpal. Okay, fifth metacarpal bone, base. Okay, so when you say base, this is the base of the metacarpal bone. Okay, this is the whole metacarpal bone, right? The base is, okay, the base is right here. Okay. Again, since it is extensor, it is supplied with the radial nerve. Okay. So when you say extensor carpi ulnaris, it is crossing the elbow. So extend the elbow. Extend the wrist. Okay. Then it adducts the wrist, meaning it moves the wrist to the medial side. You call that ulnar deviation. Okay. Okay, and conus. Actually, this is a very small muscle at the elbow. Okay, that one. So obviously, it only crosses the elbow joint. So it can only extend the elbow joint, nothing more, nothing less. So origin, you have the lateral epicondyle. Okay, then it is inserted at the ulna. Okay, this is the origin, lateral epicondyle. Then insertion is right here, the ulna. Particularly the olecranon process of the ulna. Okay, extend the elbow only. Yeah, that's all. Radial nerve, synthysis, and extensor. Okay, so let's go now to the deep. Okay, so if suppose sa anterior tatlo, you have superficial, intermediate, deep. But in the posterior, you only have superficial and deep. Okay, again, you have the polyches. Okay, so most of the posterior muscle of the deep group And the posterior forearm is composed of muscle that moves the thumb. Okay, only one ang Y, the supinator. Okay, so let's discuss them. Okay, supinator. So, supinator, of course, supinates the forearm. Okay, so you have the lateral epicondyle of the humerus and the ulna. So actually, the ulna is right here, the ulnar origin. Okay, yellow. Okay, the ulnar origin, and you have your lateral epicondyle. Okay, so this will insert at the radius. They will pull the radius so that it can supinate it. Okay, so neck and shaft. Okay, supination of the forearm, and since it is the posterior group, it is supplied by the radial nerve. Okay, so supinator muscle, I think, is one of the deepest muscle there at the posterior forearm. Okay, so the thumb. Now, you have to remember that the bone, the forearm bone that is closer to the thumb is the radius, correct? So, if you have ulnar origin, like your abductor pollicis, it is long because it is farther from the thumb. That's why it is longus. Okay? So, it will go to the anterior and pull the thumb, and it can abduct the thumb. Okay? So, you have the origin. Okay, so radius and ulna. Okay, so I will mark the origin. So we have the ulnar origin and you have the radial origin. Okay, and this is the insertion. Okay, base. Oh, sorry. Base of the first. That idea. Okay. Sorry, no overshoot. Okay. I'm gonna think of a class extensor pollicis in the abductor. Okay, so I will mark the origin red. I will change the color. Okay. Origin, ulna, radius. Insertion is the yellow. Base of the first metacarpal bone. Okay. So it, of course, abduct and extend the thumb. Okay. So even though it's not an extensor, it has an accessory movement of extensor. Okay. Of course, it is from the posterior group, then it is supplied with the radial nerve. Okay, then extensor pollicis brevis. Okay, actually, this is already two. This is your extensor. Oh, sorry. I'll change the color. Okay, this is your longus. Okay, that's your longus. And the brevis is right here. Okay, it's nearer. So the origin of the brevis is the radius. Okay, this is the origin, and this is the insertion. Okay, the longus is right here, origin. Okay, so posterior surface of the shaft of the radius, this one, posterior. Okay, because this one is the origin of the longus. Okay, so the yellow is the origin of the brevis, and the red arrow is the origin of the longus. Okay, the longus will be on the next slide actually. Okay, so again, arrow red, That's the origin of the longus. Okay? Arrow yellow, that's the origin of the brevis. Okay, so longus is from the ulna and brevis is from the radius. Okay, so you have the base of the proximal phalanx. Okay, so this is the distal, this is the proximal. Okay, so proximal phalanx. Okay, extend the MCP joint, of course, because extensor pollicis brevis and supplied with the radial nerve. Okay, let's go to the next because they're actually the same. Okay, so right now you have posterior surface of the ulna. Kainaya, posterior surface of the radius, ang brevis. Okay, ano po yung difference nila? Ang longus, distal, ang insertion, distal phalanx. Ang brevis siya, proximal phalanx. Okay, that's the contrast. And both of them extend the thumb and ang longus extend pagid ang interpharyngeal joint. Okay? So again, radial nerve because all of them are supplied with the radial nerve. Okay. Extensor indicis. So your extensor indicis, this is the origin and this is the insertion. Okay, so origin is posterior surface of the ulna and insertion is extensor expansion of the index finger. Okay, so together with the extensor digitorum. And of course, it extends the index finger. Okay? Okay. And it is supplied by the radial nerve. Okay, so ang tanan class nga posterior, radial nerve na ako ni tanan. See this one? Radial nerve. Okay? And anong common origin? Lateral epicondyle. I think no need to memorize. Okay? Superficial group, origin, lateral epicondyle, nerve supply, ulnar. What is the difference? Just the insertion. Okay? Of course, when you say ulnaris, it is inserted to the medial aspect of the hand. What are the bone at the medial aspect of the hand? The ulnaris. Okay, ano? Fifth metacarpal bone. When you say radialis, what is the carpal and metacarpal bones at the lateral hand? Okay, you have there your third metacarpal. Okay, so that's how you take note. Okay, next, the deep group. You have the supinator, okay, abductor pollicis, extensor pollicis, extensor indicis. Again, all radial nerve. Okay, but the origin right now, there's some differences, but mostly the radius and the ulna, and you have there your lateral epicondyle. Okay, because most of this muscle don't have an origin from the humerus anymore. Okay, it's either from the radius or the ulna. Okay, okay, so this is the deep group and the superficial group. Okay, actually this is the lateral, this is your brachioradialis and this is your extensor carpiradialis longus. Those are the lateral compartment. Okay, so the posterior will start right here. This is the extensor carpiradialis brevis, then your digitorum, your ulnaris. Okay, and you have deep muscles right here, the pollicis. Okay, the supinator. Okay, So that's all for the muscles of the forearm.